Hello everyone and welcome to my top 10 list for the Dice Towers Spring Spectacular. Now, I sort of wanted a positive, happy feeling sort of list, so I went for the top 10 animal themed games. Now, there was multiple ways I could have done this. Obviously, every game on the list has to be animal themed, but I've tried to balance the list by how good I think the game is, but also how well it uses that animal theme rather than is it just pasted on. There's a bit of both on the list. They're not necessarily in the order that I would say is number one is the best game, but it probably does balance those two criteria the best. Anyway, let's kick off the top 10 with number 10. Number 10 is a sheep-themed game. You can rack your brains for a second. It is Battle Sheep. Now this is a very quick, quite mean 2 to 4 player game. Each of you is basically, there's this field in the middle. This sort of modular board of sorts, so you can basically place these big field tiles down to make a large field. Each of you is then going to start with this rather nice chunky poker chip style stack of sheep. They're pulling these weird and funny faces. On your turn, you're basically moving some of your stack around the board, across the board, sort of in the furthest way it can go. You're trying to do this to get areas and block off your opponents. And there's a really interesting, fun part of this game where it gets down to it and it's like, right, if I can just block that sort of player's almost tower of sheep there, if I can block that in, that's a lot of wasted sheep from their point of view. It works well at 2. The chaos ramps up as you start adding in that 3rd or 4th player though, because all of a sudden you're paying attention to this player blocking you in, and then that one, the other player makes that move and you're like, oh, I need to get out of this sort of tight spot. Like I say, it's a super quick and super kind of mean game. You know, if you're playing it one-on-one with a partner, it might not end too well, but for a group of friends or whatever that's just taking it quite light-hearted, it can be a lot of fun, and that is Battle Sheep, my number 10. My number 9 is a game that people debated the name of until the 2nd edition was released, and to be fair, I think people still do. It's Camel Up. Now, I'm saying it like that, some people do refer to this as Camel Cup. Now, there is a 2.0, a 2nd edition, and I'm split on, to be honest, which edition would make this list. I've gone for 2nd edition because that's the one in my collection now, but if you've got the opportunity to get the original, just Camel Up, it's also brilliant. So what is this game? Well, you are effectively betting on this camel race. You don't, like in many other races, you don't necessarily own one of the camels, but you will still want specific camels to win. Basically, there's going to be this pyramid where dice come out of, and they will move the different camels. Then you've got the opportunity to, sort of on your turn, maybe use one of those dice from the pyramid to move a camel, or bid on them. So you can bid on them in terms of, I think for this leg of the race, they're going to be in front. But also you can get points for bidding, or earliest, basically, who's going to win the race overall. Now, the 2nd edition adds a bit extra flair into it because there's camels going backwards. But why does that all matter? And what is the awesome twist of Camel Up? Well, it's the fact that the camels go up. So when you move forward onto a space with a camel already there, you put it on top. And that means if that camel goes forward or backwards, it takes the camels stacked up with it, which is a lot of fun. It's maybe better at sort of a small-ish player count, not the lowest, but like a 4-player count, that's where it really shines. And that is Camel Up, 1 or version 2. The only difference is there's a couple of camels that go the wrong way around the track. My number 8, I am slightly cheating, but I combine these games, and to be honest, they rarely come off the shelf as an individual game. It's penguin themed. Ice Cool 1 and 2, the pun being high school of these penguins. So it's animal themed, but it is basically dexterity fun. It's not really using the animal theme too much to its advantage, other than cute penguins and sort of the kind of logic of the high school, the ice cool area is made of ice, so as you're flicking them and they're skidding about, it kind of makes some very loose thematical sense. There's multiple ways to play this. If you've got the 2, you can do like a race mode. And that's probably my favourite because it means the maps can be bigger because you use both game boxes together. You can also create different maps, including ones where middle boxes move, which is absolutely soul destroying when you take the flick and realise the box had moved and you hadn't clocked it before you flicked. But anyway, you are flicking these penguins about either in a race, maybe even as a part of a team, a pair, flicking penguins, or the original, which is if you just have one of them, you are flicking these penguins through the doors. 3 of the players are basically trying to run around and go through doorways to collect their fish. The other player, the sort of all against one, that one player is actually sort of like the hall monitor, and they're trying to bump into all of the other penguins and take their hall passes off them, and that's how they get points. So you get the sort of hilarity of trying to flick through a doorway to get a penguin, you miss, you bounce off one wall, you somehow end up in a completely different room that you didn't mean to, don't collect any fish, and then you've lined yourself up for the hall monitor to just come and tap you. You're still in though. You're not actually eliminated if they get your hall pass. You carry on. The sort of round ends either when someone's got all their fish or the hall monitor's got all of the ID cards off the other penguins. So it balances it. It's like you've lost that because that would get you a fish card at the end of the round. It's going to get them now, but you're not eliminated, and I do like that. It's just pure fun, and I have to admit I have backed the Iron Forest Kickstarter, the sequel as such, because it was expensive. Ice Cool is phenomenal fun and penguin themed. My number 7 is a relatively new game. In fact, it is probably the newest game on the list, and that is Llama Land. Now, anything to do with polyomino tiles I do normally enjoy, and this sort of takes polyominoes and allows you to build outwards and upwards, which is quite a lot of fun. There's also some incredibly cute llama meeples which you'll be placing around sort of as you're building up. Now what you're trying to do is cover up symbols. These symbols could get you people, like helpers that give you little bonuses, or it could be the resources, such as like corn, that you're then going to trade in for llamas. Llamas give you points, brilliant. They also give you the llama meeple, brilliant. That llama meeple then sort of blocks where you might want to be building. So there's endgame objectives that you can try and score, get on the scoring tracks for them, and that's an interesting part of maybe getting so many llamas on like a level 3 height. The problem is once a llama goes down, you can't build anything on that spot, so you then have to start working around the llamas. And it's very much what I enjoyed from the game number 9, with a cool theme, and with that just little bit extra of why am I doing this other than building up for points? You're building up to then put these llamas out to gain the points, in maybe lines or just at certain heights and stuff like that. And it's the way that you get a llama that's scoring you points. It's maybe getting you end game points as well, but it's still blocking you for that sort of rest of the game. It means you're first to get a camel. First you get a llama, sorry, and that means you've got the highest scoring llama, but you're now the first person to be having to awkwardly work around that llama meeple. It's a really cool design, and that is Llama Land. Number 6 is a game all about rescuing an animal from an island, or an Isle of Cats in this case. The Isle of Cats is a really fun, again, polyomino style game. I do like those quite a bit. And it combines polyomino placements, love that. It also has drafting. Now you can get around the drafting if you play the family mode, I believe. I haven't played that one, but it just simplifies the game somewhat, which I think it allows it to maybe get to more audiences, a wider audience. So that's brilliant because it's a really fun game. You're trying to build up these sets of cats on your boat, but you're also trying to do it in a way that's not beneficial, but not negative. Basically, there's a load of rooms on this boat, and it's extremely hard to fill those rooms, despite the cats being able to lay across the walls. Because if you don't fill a room, at the end of the game, it will lose you points. So you get this interesting conundrum of, well, I want to put this green cat with the green cats, but it's the perfect shape to just fill this last bit of this room in. And that's worth -5 points if I don't do that. Certainly towards the end of the game, you get these choices more and more of, I could get points here, or I could maybe not lose points here. There's some really interesting choices to be made there. And then there's sort of objective cards that come up as well to give you more points. More points is always fun. And yeah, you just get like this very colourful ship at the end of the game with all these different coloured cats and even some cat meeples and stuff as well. Really like the Isle of Cats and excited to try the explore and draw version when it sort of becomes available. My number 5 is the silliest game on this list, but it really does quite use the animals kind of in a sort of a unique way. It's called Tumble Tree, and it's sort of a family game for 2 to 4 players. Basically, there is this metal tin that the game comes in, that is the tree. You get so many cards from within it, and you've sort of created this tree that you're going to be dropping, or blindly dropping, or anything, different types of animals. And the different animals mean you have to do different things. One might be just balancing it near the edge, because that's the only place they'll go. Now, balancing near the edge is like one of those coin machines that you get sort of on the seaside, where, you know, in that case, you want the coins just to go over the edge, but in this case, it's just teetering on the edge and balancing, and you're praying that card's going to stay there. Then there's other ones, like I said, that you are dropping from like a certain height. There's even one where you have to do it with your eyes closed. Half the time you end up missing the actual thing in the middle of the table. It uses it in a really fun way of all the animals have to be added in a different way. And it's just pure sort of childish fun. It's not going to be for heavy gamers, but for families, I really do think a Tumble Tree could be one for you. My number 4 can be a game where people get squished, or not people, but snakes and foxes. Great Plains is a 2-player only game that has really captured me. Not just from the very sort of vibrant pieces, they're quite like, the foxes are like bright orange and the snakes are bright blue. Now that gets your attention, but what keeps you hooked is the gameplay. It's a very short game, you're talking maybe 15 minutes at maximum. And on a turn, all you're doing is basically placing one of your team, so either the foxes or the snakes, onto the board somewhere adjacent to either one of your previously placed meeples or one of your starting base points. Now, there are other things, but that is the core concept, and you're trying to get into areas that are of a light colour, light green or yellowy sort of colour, because those areas, whoever's controlling them as a majority, will score a number of points, with bonus points for waterfalls. Now, that would be an okay game. What makes it really good is there are dark green areas that you can also place your meeples onto. that give you these special tokens. Now there's 3 tokens. One of them is literally just lets you go a space away. So it's like a horse. You can run that bit further away from one of your other tribe meeples. And that's fairly useful for maybe getting around the corner of a mountain that you can't normally get around, or just ninjaing into a new area that you can then build out from. There's a hawk that allows you to go directly over a mountain. Now, again, this is brilliant for sort of sneaking into an area that you shouldn't be allowed to get to normally, but you've had to have picked that token up, and then you can hold on to it and then be like, now's a good time. Then there's the final one, the bear. This is a slightly mean one. It needs to be there because otherwise things might get stale. And this adds the little bit in the back of your mind of, are they going to do that? Because the bear allows you to basically shove one of the other meeples. Now, if you shove them off the board, that meeple's gone. If you shove them it's directly into a rock, they are gone. They're squished, which is thematically quite fun, for the want of a better word. But it means that you can shunt them off of a point-scoring area that you're trying to get a majority of, and maybe they have a bear to use back. So then you've got the conundrum of, well, if I do it to them, they're just going to do it back to me. But you can sometimes line it up where there isn't the edge of the board, or there isn't a rock face. And it's like, well, you can push me, but it's not going to do much. I'm still going to be in that hexagon area of hexagons. For 2 players, it's a really good game that has just enough. You can easily do like a best of 3 with this one because it's so short and the area majority is super quick. At the end, it's nice and quick to count up the areas to work out who's won. And like I said, it's those other animal tokens that you can collect along the way that give you those one-time special abilities. Now they really take the game to sort of the next level. My number 3 is a game all about a variety of bears in a zoo. It's Barron Park. Now, whether you have the expansion, the amazingly named Bad News Bears expansion, whether you have that or not, it's a brilliant polyomino style placement game. But what you're trying to do is build out this zoo in a way that you are not only filling all the different spaces, because that will get you a bear statue, but you're trying to place them in a certain ways that give you the more tiles to place. So on your turn, you place a tile that you have in your pool, and if you cover over certain symbols, you can take from the middle. It's the fact that you place that down and you're like, if I just angle it like this, then I can cover that symbol. That allows me to get a better tile, because there are sort of point scoring tiles, there's greenery tiles, and there's sort of big sort of enclosure tiles. The big ones then allow you to cover bigger areas easier, covering more symbols, but maybe you have to squeeze them in because you've already built quite a bit. And it's a really interesting puzzle to sort of be playing. And you have to watch what other people are doing, because there are objectives. So maybe in one game it's the first to get so many polar bear enclosures onto your park board. So you can start to be like, right, I've got 2, they've got 2, I really do need to cover this symbol, so get that last one or just the next one from the pile to be able to put it down. But there's multiple objectives. So sometimes you want polar bears, sometimes you want rivers that are connected, sometimes you want toilet blocks that are at opposite ends of the park, and doing all of them is very rarely that easy to do. It is one of my favourite games, Barron Park. So you might be thinking, why hasn't it got in the top 2? I think they do the animal theme better. So my number 2 is a game that most people are probably starting to think would be the easy choice for number 1, and partially that's why it's not, but I do think the other game does animals better. And this is a bird game by Elizabeth Hargrave for 1 to 5 players, Wingspan. Now, Wingspan, you can tell, is sort of a design, a labour of love, in terms of there's so many birds. The production quality, like with most Stonemaier games, is through the roof. You've got these lovely eggs that you're pulling from the bag. They look like they should be sweets that you're going to eat, but please don't. You've got chunky dice that go through a dice tower, and then you've got the huge deck. Now, it's a very plain but stunning artwork design. They're very much white cards with just a little bit, that splash of colour coming from the drawing of the birds themselves. Then, actually, there's a lot of theme in there, in terms of birds that actually lay lots of eggs, allow players to lay more eggs on them than others. There are some birds in that deck that their ability is that they lay eggs instead of on their own card, on other cards. And that's because normally in real life, they would lay eggs in other birds' nests and sort of piggyback off them. The deck is huge, and that's before you even get the expansions. Now, European expansion, I think I love that because it means there's more birds that I can see on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not a bird watcher or tweeter or whatever it's called, and I still enjoy the theme. The Oceania ones, I think they're cool birds, but I think it does take some of that ease of play away and makes it more gamery. Means sometimes it hits the table like that, sometimes it doesn't. But base game Wingspan is really, really good fun for the engine building, because at the start of the game, you've got these columns. You take one of the 4 actions, play a bird, get food, lay eggs, get cards. Those are kind of meh actions at the beginning. You're taking 1 dice from the bird feeder. Woohoo! As you start to play birds out, though, not only when you take that action will it maybe trigger the action of that bird, or the bonus action almost of that bird, as well as gaining you the food. You're covering these slots up, which means by the end you might be taking 3 bits of food from dice at once, or laying multiple eggs, drawing many cards. And that engine building bit does feel really good. The variety of the different end of round scoring cards, as well as having some end of the game scoring cards, which again come back to the theme, because they are normally things like have so many birds with a wingspan that's smaller than this, or with maybe colours in their name. The first couple of times I played, I didn't enjoy those cards, because it was like, there was a couple where it was like, how am I ever going to realise, like logically, that bird is that? Well, it is in the back of the rulebook, and to be honest, it gets a lot easier once you've played once or twice. Wingspan is much loved, and it's clear to see why. I do think it's better than Mariposas, Elizabeth Hargrave's sort of follow-up, which is also animal-themed. That just didn't quite live up to the hype that Wingspan got. It got so hyped, and yet it still lived up to it, and I think that is a testament to Wingspan of why it's so good. But it's not my number 1. Let's find out what is. And last but not least, my favourite game that is animal themed right now. It beats Wingspan because I think it does do animal theme better. It doesn't just do birds, it does an animal theme really well. And that's because you're building up a habitat as well as putting animals out, and that's Cascadia. Now, many people will maybe prefer Calico, which is it's sort of the prequel cat-themed game in that series. That, for me, is too frustrating because it's very restrictive. Cascadia allows you to build these tiles out in any direction you want, creating these habitats of swampy area, mountains, forest over here, a bit of forest over there, a river wiggling down over here. And it looks quite visually cool, and then there's actually the reason you're doing it, which is, let's be honest, points. So the way the game works is in the middle of the table there will be a tile and a token pair. You will on your turn be taking one of those pairs, so 1 tile, 1 token. You'll place that tile in and add it to your habitat areas, maybe expanding that bit of forest. And then you'll be trying to place, if you can or want to, that animal onto an area of your habitat. Because each habitat has maybe a selection of some of the animals. So some will maybe only allow you to put hawks there. Maybe another one allows you to put an elk or a bear. And that's where the choices start to go. But it's not being restrictive. You can always do something you might just not want to. Because in each game, and there's multiple versions of each card, so there's bears, elks, there's hawks, and more, foxes and such. Each game you play with one of those. And say like the salmon card, normally you can try, like one of them is like you want them in like a run, a like long line of salmon. Another one, the bear card, for instance, they might want to be in pairs. The hawks might want to be sort of completely opposite ends, and it's the further they are apart. Or maybe they just want to be apart from each other, and it doesn't matter how far they are. Those animal cards make sense. The elks often want to be together, maybe in a pattern or just a big blob. The bears do want to be in a pair, but they maybe don't want too much around them, or what they want around them needs to be a sort of certain amount of other pairs of animals and stuff like that. It takes the theme of building out these habitats and having your different animals wanting different things. Like, like I said, the elks being a blob of elks and stuff like that to score big. And then there is that central choice of, right, if I take this, they're going to be able to get the bear, but yeah, you can play mean like that. Or you can just do your own thing. I'm wanting to build out this river area, so I'm going to take that tile and I'm going to take this sort of token and try and put that animal somewhere. The final twist is you can get acorns, which allow you to disrupt that market in the middle. Maybe burning a load of the animals, burning a load of the tokens, putting them back in the bag and pulling new ones out. Not burning animals. Or you can actually trade that acorn in to take any tile and any animal token rather than the distinct pairs that they're put in. It's a lot of fun, and I think it's much more forgiving than Calico, the one it's not a sequel of, but it's in that same family of games. It just does the animal theme really well because of those scoring cards. And a bit like Isle of Cats, there is even a mode that you can play where you can score for slightly simpler things, like a slight family variant. Again, I've not tried that though. Anyway, that is my top 10 animal-themed games. Like I said, I tried to tailor them so it's not just pasted on themes. Some of them, near the top of the list, or the higher numbers in the list, they were maybe pasted on themes but fun. As we went through the list, maybe the theme sort of got a bit more important. What have I missed? There are some games that sort of wouldn't make my list. Now let's see. Parks, that was very close to coming on the list. Another game, Fox in the Forest Duet, or the original, a very nice little card game, but not too much really about animals. Calico, like I say, wouldn't make my list. I don't enjoy that one too much. And another one that nearly made the list because it's iconic animal rather than animals was Jaws. But it kind of felt a bit more of a film than an animal-themed game. But what have I missed? What sort of animal games do you love that I haven't mentioned? Which did you think was the best game on the list? Let us know in the comment section below and enjoy the rest of the spectacular.